Hi guys, Jonathan from Chiropractic Center here, and today we're going to be talking about what that popping sound is when you get adjusted chiropractically. Before we get to that, you need to understand that most of the time chiropractors are actually adjusting joints. And just quickly, a joint is a site where two bones come together, and it is very important to understand that that cracking noise is coming from inside this joint and not at the bone. Because if chiropractors were cracking bones, then there would actually be a lot more harm being done rather than the good that we're trying to achieve through that therapeutic approach. Now, joints are typically flexible and should be able to move. Sometimes joints can become restricted due to different stresses. Think about typing down at a computer, what all that leaning forward and the stress that's going on at the back of your neck is likely to be doing to your spine. Looking at smartphones or tablets, typing constantly, or even writing or leaning in on your hands, all of these things are going to be affecting different joints in different ways. When one joint is stiff or has a restricted range of motion, it is stopping the body from functioning at its optimum levels. Let's look at the spine to begin with. Sometimes we'll get restrictions at joints in the spine. Let's pick this one for example. At the moment it's able to move quite nicely, left and right, up and down. And sometimes, if that becomes restricted, what needs to happen is the segment above and the segment below need to move even further to compensate for this restricted joint. So if I turn that one into a restricted joint, to get bending that way and backwards, these other joints around it have to move more. And that can create hypermobility or over-flexibility at the joint above and below the restricted segment. And this can lead to weakened or lax joints, muscles and ligaments further down the line. So how do we get the sound to move, and how do we find what the restricted joints are? We look at you and we do an assessment. We do what is called joint play, where we're feeling the joints from left to right, up and down, and trying to find aberrant motion. If we do find aberrant motion, then it's relatively straightforward to find that area and try and move that area in a way that's going to release that joint, free it up, and improve its range of motion. It's important to understand that chiropractors do not use force to do this. It is typically skill and speed which gets the movement that is required. It's not about how strong you are, it's about the correct technique being applied and in the right direction so that we can get that range of motion improved and get that joint moving again so you can function at your optimum levels. Okay, so I've told you a reason why chiropractors will adjust, but now I need to answer the question, what is the popping noise? Now, the popping noise is inside of the joint. Inside of the joint, we have a synovial fluid, and inside of that fluid, there are small pockets of air bubbles, which are in that fluid that surrounds your joints. When the joint tissues are stretched during a chiropractic adjustment, the pockets of air can pop, which creates the cracking sound that you hear. After this treatment, you may feel more movement in that joint, and typically, even doing that same motion will not elicit the same cracking sound again. This is because it takes some time for those little air bubbles to form again. So it's important to understand that the crack itself is not the therapeutic result that we're after, but actually the improvement in the range of motion. Okay, so now I've told you why do chiropractors adjust. I've given you a good reason. We're trying to increase the range of motion at the joint segment, and two, what it is that is the sound that you hear when getting adjusted. Remember, the sound isn't the most important thing, it's actually the improvement at the range of motion at the joint segment itself. I'm Jonathan Distiller from Q Chiropractic Center, and I hope I've helped you understand.